Hey everybody, it is still July 3rd, 2025, and it's about 3:50, and about 45 minutes ago is when I finished the meeting with my doctor online. I had some family stuff to deal with before I was able to get to the camera, but it's alright. So here are my initial thoughts, walkthrough. It took a little over an hour, the whole thing. A little bit of us just kind of chatting at the end, but there was a lot to cover. And again, she's going to send me a full report in a couple of weeks. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to post this next week, and then next week I will record, my thoughts after I've kind of sat with it for a little bit, and release that the week after, and then I will read through the full report and release that. Maybe do a walkthrough. We'll see. So like I said, it took about an hour. It was very detailed. It started with just going over my spatial reasoning. She did say that her word, funky, my results were funky. And she was having a hard time figuring out whether I needed to be diagnosed as autistic or not. So that didn't change. Everything I've taken has been like, except for the masking. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But she said, we'll go ahead and keep the ADHD diagnosis. I think that that's good. There's a few things that are a little inconsistent, but overall, yeah. She started with talking about spatial and verbal reasoning, those parts, and basically said that on an IQ test, I'd be in the 98th percentile. And the only thing that brought me down was for some things that required physical things, it took me a little bit longer to process, which was brought me down quite a bit because I was in the 55th percentile. And everything else I was high enough to be in the 98th percentile with the 55th percentile. But I later on talked, when I came back to it, I told her about how, I'm fairly certain I have dysgraphia. And she's like, that would, adjusting for that would be very different. So apparently I'm smart, but I very much want to be clear, while IQ tests are better than they were when they started, they are still mostly designed for white American men. So I do take that with a grain of salt. She did note that the spatial reasoning part is pretty much universal, and that I scored, I think she said 97th, 98th percentile on that. So I can be proud of that and not have to give a huge caveat. Now, I'm still going to do that because I still think that I just think differently than most people. Again, why I'm trying to get a diagnosis or not. And I stand by that. There are a lot of things that other people can do that I just definitely can't. I'm good at taking tests and talking. Hey, look, I'm talking. I'm a teacher. I talk for a living. I do what I'm good at. So that's okay. So that was flattering, though. It was good to know. She was very impressed with my scores, said she'd never seen scores that high in her career. And unlike her, the assessor, she's been doing it for a while. It's been her career for some time. She went through and got a doctorate, so there's that. So there's that. We then talked about the general test, the one that I told you was 377 questions, that I was like, that's a lot broader. And she did say very clearly came through for depression, anxiety, and traumatic stress disorder. I would imagine complex traumatic, but she just said traumatic stress disorder. So not too particularly surprising. I mean, obviously, I already told you earlier that I had depression and anxiety, and there's a lot of things in the way that I act that I could definitely see a stress disorder. So, not much there new. She discussed ADHD terms, and it basically boiled down to the way that I interacted with everything on the day didn't necessarily suggest that I had ADHD, but I told you that they had the three questionnaires they sent my sister, and I filled one out that was also for ADHD, and those came through very ADHD. The fact that I'm very bad at finishing projects, or that I hyper focus on one thing and then forget about it, that kind of thing, which is absolutely true. So I'm not hyperactive, right? But I am flaky, kind of lose interest. That's not too surprising. So we kept the ADHD diagnosis. We then just talked about the different parts of the test, how well I did on them, breaking down each one. And then it came time for whether or not I was diagnosed with autism spectrum. And she didn't really know, because apparently I'm very much on the line. A lot of the stuff that I did that day, the way I interacted, the way they observed, did not scream ASD. But again, the questionnaire with my sister and myself both very much did. And to be clear, I did not discuss the questionnaire with my sister. I asked, did you do the questionnaires? And that's it. I very specifically avoided it. Of course, I had already taken the questionnaires by the time I asked her that, with the exception of the last two that I had to take at home. So her answers were right in line with mine. That says a lot. So we talked, and she asked me questions about, my intrapersonal relations, how I interact with people, how I observe the world. So we talked about things like I'm very measured in the way that I say things, and more importantly, in the way that I present myself physically. So I am very, very calculating in the way that I do things like hold my hands, or in the amount of eye contact I make. So I will, count 3 to 5 seconds in a conversation, especially when I'm listening to someone. When I'm talking to someone, it's a whole lot easier for me to just kind of glance and go back and forth. But when I'm listening to someone, I try to make sure I'm getting the right amount of eye contact. Things like that. Things like small talk. How, we talked about how when it comes to like, oh, how's the weather today? Yeah, I can do that. I'm pretty good at talking to people, but when it comes any past that little itty bitty superficial, it becomes, yeah, tell me about yourself. I'm a human. I make films. I've been doing it since and I just go on about films or music or something like that, as opposed to talking about basic interests. What's my favorite dinosaur? What's my favorite color? That kind of thing. Not good at that. So that's a gross misrepresent. Like, I've downplayed or a poor summary of the conversation, but basically it was a conversation about how I interact with people and how I interact with the world around me. And we talked about that, and, she kind of said, the thing is, I don't know if you, when you were in the assessment, if you were just acting normally, or if you're really good at masking because of your intelligence level. And I kind of went, well, I've been doing it for 40 years, got a lot of practice. I spent a lot of time studying how people interact. And I talked about how I am very particular in the way that I fact check and the way that I think of things. If I say a word and I'm 95% sure that I used the word in the correct context, I will go back and check and make sure so that I'm 100% sure. That kind of thing. I talked about different rules that I have in my life, different things that I have to do. My aversion to loud noises and other textures and stuff like that. And so about half an hour or so into it, she said, okay, so I've put all this information in and it looks like you are very, very, very mildly on the spectrum. So there you go. There's my diagnosis. Kind of autistic. Not fully, but kind of. A little bit. I just have a little bit of the tism. So I'm neurospicy, but I'm like white person neurospicy.
White person neurospicy.
You know, in that respect. So yeah, effectively, I know as much as I did before, but with a doctor's seal of approval on it. And she was, you know, making note, adding it to my list of things. And then I told her that, you know, I had taken all these tests on embraceautism.com and how they all were kind of like, except for the masking. And so she went, oh, you took the, and she named it cat something or other, the masking one. I was like, yeah. So I pulled up the scoring and went, yeah, I got 150 on that. And then I told her the breakdown of the score. And she went, I am definitely adding that. So that will be possibly an adjustment in my, it's the CAT-Q test. That will possibly be an adjustment in my diagnosis when I get the paperwork. I don't know. But we talked about that, and then the last, 20 minutes, 15 minutes were kind of going over what to do from here, which, I'm on medication for my depression and anxiety. I manage my depression really well. My anxiety sometimes gets the best of me, but I'm pretty good at managing that as well. So, she talked about, possible therapy, a few other things, and I'll go more into detail in that when I have the paperwork, because she said some specific things that I don't know exactly what they are. She kind of gave me an overview, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I will discuss that in a few weeks. But I did address my concerns, like I said, with the IQ test and how I don't really buy them. I mean, I know I'm good at taking standardized tests, but they're also kind of made for me. And she kind of went through and kind of talked about how it's a lot more equitable these days. It's still geared toward English-speaking people on the verbal part, but yeah, it's in English. But it's a lot, and then the spatial reasoning. And I was like, I still stand by the idea that I am not smarter than anybody else. I just think differently. And it happens to be that the things that IQ tests are things that I think differently on. I don't. And she was very nice about it. She was like, oh, you're an exception. And I'm like, I'm a human being. But that led me to my favorite part, that I scored very low in pretentiousness and very high in humbleness. So now I can do like Drax and go, I too am incredibly humble, which just tickles me. So, and she got a kick out of that because she had a little baby Groot right by her desk. And she asked me, I told her I was doing these films, and she asked me if once I get the final video out, if she could watch them. And I said, absolutely. So, hopefully, I'm sorry I said your name. I can delete that if you want me to. But hopefully you will find something useful in this to help other people in the future. That's the whole point. I couldn't find exactly what I needed, so I provided it for others. And hopefully those of you that are listening find something meaningful in this. As I said before, I am not any kind of doctor. I don't know any more about this than the average Joe. I'm just a guy going through a journey and sharing it with you so that you don't feel alone. Your experience will definitely vary, and that's okay. You're going to have different assessors and doctors than I do. That's life. There are different ways of going through it. That's just how mine went. So, yeah. One of the things that I definitely believe, because again, she did mention therapy for my dealing with anxiety, depression, and all that. It's something I've done before, but I do believe that everybody can be helped by therapy, regardless if you are neurospicy or not. I think that it can be very good for you, especially in times when you are going through transition in life. So don't be afraid. Even if you think I'm hunky-dory, there might be something that you need to get off your chest that you don't know. Or there might be, again, a choice that you need to make that you just aren't sure of. Or a change that you didn't realize needs to be made. So I am very much a proponent of therapy. If you can go. If you don't have the money, there are plenty of charities that will help. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks for coming by. Like I said, after I've had some time to sit on it for a few days, I will make another video, post that in a week or so, and then once I get the final paperwork, I will, once I've gone through that, I'll make a video of that. So I'll see you a couple more times. Thank you all, and have a day.